In February 1945, on the sulphurous island of Iwo Jima, Takahashi Toshiharu found himself in a concrete bunker, a silent observer as American tanks rumbled closer through the volcanic ash. His unit had spent months preparing for this exact moment, meticulously studying the weak points of Sherman tanks, training with lunge mines and satchel charges. The lead tank halted 150 yards away, too distant for a suicide charge but within range of the 47mm anti-tank gun in the adjacent bunker. Then, something entirely new unfolded. Instead of a shell, a violent stream of orange and black liquid erupted from the tank's main gun, arcing through the air like a deadly river. It engulfed the neighboring bunker, and Takahashi heard the screams. That night, he confided in his diary. The enemy was burned out with a flamethrower. The flame is dark with black smoke. I could not see even an inch ahead. Takahashi survived that day, a grim exception in his unit. He had just witnessed the terrifying debut of America's most effective weapon in the Pacific War, a weapon against which Japanese defenders had no counter. And they never saw it coming. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944 with a singular, audacious mission: make the American cost for this island so unbearable that they would reconsider invading Japan itself. Kuribayashi was no ordinary Japanese commander. He had lived in America, studied its industrial might, and understood that Japan could not hope to match American firepower in a conventional fight. So, he decided not to fight one. He meticulously dissected every Japanese defeat in the Pacific. Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu. The pattern was agonizingly consistent. Japanese commanders met Americans at the water's edge, launched glorious banzai charges, and were slaughtered in the open by American naval guns and aircraft. Kuribayashi made a revolutionary decision for Iwo Jima. No banzai charges, no meeting the enemy on the beach, no glorious deaths in open combat. His men would fight from beneath the earth. For 8 grueling months, 5,000 Japanese soldiers labored almost ceaselessly, carving 11 miles of interconnected tunnels into the volcanic rock. The original plan called for 17 miles, but American bombing curtailed construction. What they completed, however, was formidable enough. The tunnel system plunged 7 stories deep in some areas, boasting underground chambers large enough to hold 300 men, hospitals with operating rooms 75 feet below the surface, and command centers linked by miles of telephone wire. Above ground, 1,500 fortified positions peppered the island. Concrete bunkers with walls 4 feet thick, steel doors that opened only to fire before sealing shut. Every position was designed with interlocking fields of fire, ensuring every inch of the island's surface could be swept by Japanese guns. The true genius lay in the connections. When Americans cleared a bunker with grenades, Japanese soldiers would simply retreat through the tunnels and reoccupy it from below, positions that took hours to capture becoming active again within minutes. Kuribayashi had transformed 8 square miles of volcanic rock into a fortress that defied conventional military tactics. American intelligence confidently estimated the island would fall in 5 days. Before the Marines even landed, American forces unleashed the heaviest bombardment of any Pacific island. 74 consecutive days of aerial bombing, dropping 6,800 tons of explosives onto those 8 square miles. Then, the Navy arrived, unleashing 22,000 shells from battleships and cruisers until the island disappeared under a shroud of smoke and fire. American planners were confident. Nothing could survive that kind of punishment. Intelligence officers predicted light resistance. They were gravely mistaken. The bombardment destroyed fewer than 200 of the 1,500 fortified positions. The tunnel system was virtually untouched, and most Japanese soldiers hadn't a scratch. They waited in their underground chambers, following Kuribayashi's precise instructions. Let the Americans land. Let them move inland. Let them believe the bombardment had worked. Then open fire from every direction at once. February 19th, 1945. 30,000 Marines stormed the beaches of Iwo Jima. The first wave met almost no resistance, leading some to believe the bombardment had indeed worked. It was a silence born of superhuman discipline. For nearly an hour, thousands of Japanese gunners watched the invasion force land through their firing slits. They could see the targets, hear the Marines shouting, but not one man pulled a trigger. They waited in the darkness, breathing in the sulfur and dust until the trap was full. Then, Kuribayashi gave the order. Every hidden gun position erupted simultaneously. Artillery from Mount Suribachi. Machine guns from bunkers invisible in the volcanic ash. Mortars pre-registered on every yard of the beach. The black sand swallowed vehicles. Tanks couldn't climb the steep terraces. Marines had nowhere to hide on the open beach. By nightfall, 2,400 Americans were dead or wounded. The Marines had advanced only 700 yards and hadn't even reached the main defensive line. What followed would become weeks of brutal, cave by cave, bunker by bunker fighting. Marines would clear a position, move forward, only to take fire from behind as Japanese soldiers re-emerged from tunnels. Man-portable flamethrowers helped, but they had fatal limitations. An operator had to get within 40 yards of a bunker while carrying 70 pounds of fuel on his back, making them prime targets for Japanese snipers. By the third day, Marine commanders were desperate for anything that could break this agonizing pattern. That's when 8 modified Sherman tanks arrived from Hawaii. 5 months before Iwo Jima, Colonel George Unmack assembled a clandestine team at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. Unmack commanded the Chemical Warfare Service's most secret project in the Pacific, with a mission simple to state but almost impossible to achieve. Build a weapon that could burn Japanese soldiers out of caves without getting Americans killed in the process. The problem was clear. Man-portable flamethrowers worked, but their operators died at horrific rates. They had to get close to bunkers, were slow, and were obvious targets. What Unmack needed was a flamethrower that could hit targets from a distance, carry enough fuel for sustained operations, and protect its crew from enemy fire. The solution seemed obvious. Put a flamethrower on a tank. Previous attempts had largely failed. The Canadian Ronson system had a range of only 60 to 80 yards, fuel capacity for a mere 30 seconds of fire, and mechanical failures exceeding 40%. Unmack's team would have to start from scratch. He requisitioned 25 men from the 117th Naval Construction Battalion, the Seabees. These were not ordinary sailors. They were mechanics, welders, electricians, and machinists who had built airfields under fire across the Pacific, solving problems that stumped conventional engineers. The Seabees worked alongside the 43rd Chemical Laboratory Company and the 5th Marine Tank Battalion, Army, Navy, and Marines, united by a single goal. They started with 8 M4A3 Sherman medium tanks. The 75mm main gun was removed and replaced with a flame projector connected to 300 gallons of napalm-thickened fuel. The system operated under high pressure, pushing the range beyond 150 yards, with some shots reaching 200 yards in ideal conditions. Each tank required 1,200 man-hours of modification, 1,100 electrical connections changed, and 150 custom-machined parts. The Seabees worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts beside their welding equipment, testing, failing, and testing again. By January 1945, 8 tanks were ready. From the outside, they looked identical to standard Shermans. Japanese defenders wouldn't know they were flame tanks until the first shot. The flame tanks arrived on Iwo Jima on the 3rd day of fighting. Marine commanders weren't sure what to do with them. There was no doctrine for mechanized flamethrowers, no training on how to integrate them with infantry. The tank crews, however, quickly figured it out. Their first target was a concrete bunker that had held up a marine company for 6 hours. Artillery couldn't crack it. Grenades couldn't reach the firing slits. 3 Marines had died trying to get close enough with portable flamethrowers. The Sherman rolled to within 150 yards, still too far for Japanese anti-tank guns to reliably penetrate its frontal armor. 1 4-second burst of flame. The napalm flowed into the bunker through the firing slit, consuming all the oxygen inside. The defenders died before they could scream. Word spread instantly through the Marine lines. The flame tanks could do in seconds what infantry couldn't do in hours. Within days, every Marine commander on Iwo Jima was requesting flame tank support. Japanese soldiers had never seen anything like it. Their bunkers were designed to withstand bombs and shells, concrete and steel capable of absorbing direct hits from naval guns. None of it mattered against liquid fire. The gelatinous fuel didn't just burn on impact. It splashed against the concrete, clung to the walls, and found every gap, every crack, every ventilation shaft. It poured into tunnels and spread through underground chambers. Soldiers who survived the initial blast died from oxygen depletion as the fire consumed all the air in enclosed spaces. The psychological impact was devastating. Veterans later recalled that the sound was almost as bad as the heat, a distinctive pressurized roar like a jet engine starting up, drowning out the sharp crack of rifle fire. When that sound echoed through the tunnels, every man inside knew that the seal was broken and death was seconds away. A captured Japanese commander later told American interrogators that his men would abandon positions the moment they heard a Sherman approaching. Not when the tanks fired, but when they heard the engines. The fear was so intense that it bordered on panic. Colonel Fred Caldwell witnessed a scene that encapsulated the desperation of Japanese soldiers facing flame tanks. A Japanese officer charged out of his cave toward an approaching Sherman, alone, carrying only his samurai sword. Caldwell watched the man run directly at the armored vehicle, sword raised, screaming. The tank commander saw him coming, traversed the flame projector, and fired. The stream of napalm engulfed him instantly. He was gone before he could take another step. All by himself against the tank, Caldwell recalled later. I don't know what the hell he thought he was doing. But Caldwell understood something the officer couldn't admit. There was nothing else to do. No counter-tactic, no defensive measure, no way to fight back against a weapon that killed from 150 yards away. The samurai code demanded action, so the officer charged and died. Takahashi Toshiharu's diary further illuminates the fate of soldiers unable to escape the flame tanks. His unit received orders to charge an approaching Sherman with satchel charges. 8 men, tasked with getting close enough to destroy the tank before it could fire. They never got the chance. The tank stopped 90 meters away, too far to charge. It didn't advance. Then, the Marines did something worse than burning them. They collapsed the cave entrance. Takahashi wrote that night, "We got buried alive deep under the ground. 8 people who were supposed to die by charging the tanks were deeply buried under the ground. There is no air, food, and water. It becomes a mummy as it is." He survived by digging through the rubble with his bayonet, while others carried the debris backward in the darkness. Hours of work to create a hole the size of a human head. Of the 8 men ordered to charge the tank, only Takahashi escaped. British military researchers analyzed flamethrower effectiveness after the war, and their findings explained everything. Conventional weapons produced 1 enemy death per 270 gallons of fuel expended. Flamethrowers produced 1 enemy surrender per 9 gallons. This ratio meant flamethrowers were 30 times more effective at causing surrenders than deaths. This was a psychological weapon masquerading as an incendiary one. Japanese soldiers who would fight to the death against bullets and artillery would surrender rather than face the flames. The same men who charged machine guns with bayonets would abandon fortified positions at the mere sight of a flame tank. Kuribayashi had built the perfect defense against conventional weapons, but he had no answer for terror. The Japanese did possess anti-tank weapons. The 47mm gun could penetrate Sherman armor at close range, but close range was the problem. The flame tanks operated at 150 yards. The 47mm needed to hit side armor to be effective, meaning the tank had to pass the gun position. The Shermans never passed. They stopped at range and burned the bunker without ever exposing their flanks. Suicide squads with lunge mines were theoretically effective. A soldier with a shaped charge on a pole could destroy any tank if he reached it. But reaching it meant sprinting across an open killing zone under machine gun fire from the tank's supporting infantry, then surviving long enough to detonate the mine. Almost no one made it. The flame tanks had found the gap in Japanese defensive doctrine. They could kill from beyond the range of any weapon the defenders possessed. The flame tanks had another advantage Japanese soldiers couldn't anticipate. They looked identical to regular Shermans. The CBs had mounted the flame projector inside a dummy tube designed to look exactly like the original 75mm gun. From the outside, there was no way to tell a flame tank from a standard Sherman until it fired. Japanese defensive planning assumed tanks would engage with cannon and machine guns. They positioned anti-tank weapons accordingly. When a Sherman approached a bunker, defenders expected a duel. Their guns against the tank's gun, both sides trading shots until one was destroyed. Instead, the first indication that something was different was the stream of napalm already hitting their firing slit. The deception bought the tank crew the only thing that mattered: the first shot. The 8 flame tanks at Iwo Jima proved the concept. Okinawa would prove it could scale. The 713th Tank Battalion converted all 54 of their Shermans to flame tanks specifically for the invasion. An entire battalion. Nothing but flamethrowers. They landed in April 1945 and spent the next 3 months burning through the Shuri Line, the most formidable defensive position Japan had ever constructed. The results were staggering. The 713th killed 4,788 Japanese soldiers and captured 49. Battalion losses were 8 killed and 1 missing, a kill ratio of nearly 600 to 1. They expended 76,000 gallons of napalm, burning Japanese positions across southern Okinawa. Some estimates put the total at over 200,000 gallons, including all operations. One CB who operated a flame tank on Iwo Jima summarized the weapon's effectiveness. "We did in 6 hours with 4 loads of fuel what a tank battalion and 3 infantry companies had been trying to do for 5 days." General Kuribayashi died on Iwo Jima in late March 1945. His body was never found. His defensive strategy had worked exactly as designed against conventional weapons. The bombardment failed. The initial assault stalled. American casualties mounted exactly as he had predicted. Then, 8 tanks changed everything. The tunnels he built to protect his men became the mechanism of their deaths. The deeper they went, the more trapped they were when the flames came. Sectors where flame tanks operated saw 70% fewer American casualties. They also killed over 6,000 Japanese soldiers, either by incineration or suffocation in sealed caves across Iwo Jima and Okinawa combined. The men who operated them rarely spoke about it afterward. Some had nightmares for decades. One flame tank operator dreamed he was fighting fires instead of starting them. Kuribayashi built his fortress to defeat everything America had used in the Pacific War. He couldn't prepare for a weapon that didn't exist until the Seabees built it. The flames died decades ago, but the terror they inflicted remains a stark chapter in military history.